Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week. And if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. Today I'll be teaching you how to make a modern vest. During the sketch for this one, we decided on modern, restrained, and familiar for the theme, and here are the results. A stylish vest with clean ribbing and a neckline that's familiar, but still new. Speaking of, if you love new, you are in the right place. We have hundreds of modern crochet patterns with new patterns on the way, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. And now it's time to get on the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 175 grams of yarn, or that's 250 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 5mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us a movie that can always make you cry. For me, hands down, it's Up. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 3 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, and half double crochet. This tutorial is for size small, but you can adjust it for your size, and we explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this top started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Next, we're all going to grab our 5mm hook and start off by making a chain that starts 1 inch underneath our underarm down to where we want the bottom of this top to be, so cropped or long. I want mine to be full length, so I'm going to start by making a chain that is 13 inches or 33 centimeters, and that's a chain of 55 for me. Now that we have our chain, we're going to do a half double crochet row. So block off that last chain and do a chain 2. That chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain, and we're going to half double crochet into that chain that we blocked off, or the 3rd chain from our hook. Insert, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 3. Let's do the following half double, yarn over, into that following chain, pull through 3. Continue putting 1 half double crochet into every chain, leaving the last one. We've put 1 half double crochet into every chain. Now into that last one, we're going to do an increase of 2. So all that is 2 half double crochets into that same last chain. So here's my first, and into that same chain, there is my second half double crochet, and now our following row is going to be a back loop slip stitch row. So chain 1 and flip our work. Now put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Find that last stitch from our previous row and insert into that back loop. Gently pull through everything. Again, into that following stitch's back loop. Gently pull through both loops on our hook. Continue putting 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and be sure to not tug too tightly after every stitch, otherwise the following row is going to be too tight to work into. We put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Now, just to get started on the following row, chain 2, because we're going to be alternating between a back loop half double and back loop slip stitch row, and flip our work. Now we're going to be doing our back loop half double crochets. So yarn over, find the last stitch from our previous row, and insert into that back loop, pull through all 3. Continue putting 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch until we have 1 stitch left. We've put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, and into the last one, we're going to do an increase. Yarn over, into that last back loop, insert with 2 back loop half double crochets. There's my first, here's my second, and now we're going to do our back loop slip stitch row again. So chain 1 and flip your work. just like our previous slip stitch row, put one back loop slip stitch into every stitch. From here, continue to repeat our 2 previous rows, so a back loop slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases, and then a back loop half double crochet row that ends on an increase of 2 until we have a portion that can stretch, because it does have a decent amount of stretch to it, from mid underarm over to the corner of our underarm. And I'll meet you back right after a slip stitch row. So the first half of my underarm portion is finished. I have a total of 4 rows and my width is 1 inch or 2 centimeters unstretched. Now we have to do a few more underarm rows to get a really smooth curve leading up to our shoulder. So since we should all be along the bottom, put one back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving that last one, so now we can do an increase of 3. So I've made my way up with my back loop half double crochets. Into that last stitch, we're now going to do an increase of 3. So into that same back loop, insert your hook with 3 half double crochets. This is our increase of 3 half double crochets, and for this portion of our underarm, we're going to need to increase into the slip stitch row as well. So we're going to start our slip stitch row off with a chain 2. That first chain is going to count as a stitch. That second chain counts as our turning chain, and then let's flip our work. We're now going to start our slip stitch row into that second chain from our hook. So we're going to skip 1, into that second chain, insert into that back loop, and put 1 back loop slip stitch, and then continue putting 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. From here, we're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows. So a back loop half double crochet row that now ends on an increase of 3, and then a back loop slip stitch row with an increase as well until this portion can now stretch from mid underarm over to the front of our body. And I will meet you back right after a back loop half double crochet row. The second half of my underarm portion is finished. I now have a total of 7 rows. My width is now 2 inches or 5 centimeters, still unstretched. And now we're going to make a chain that reaches all the way up to the top of our shoulder. I already have mine measured out. I need a total of 5 inches or 13 centimeters. So from here, I made a chain of 20. After we have our chain, we're going to do the following row in our row sequence, which is going to be a slip stitch row. So start by blocking off that last chain, do a chain 1, and then into that chain that we blocked off with a second chain from our hook, insert with a slip stitch, and then continue to put 1 slip stitch into every chain. When we reach the body portion, put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and then at the end of the row, chain 2, flip our work, and put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. Now this is the shoulder portion, so we aren't going to have any increases or decreases along the top or on the bottom. So we're going to continue to repeat these 2 rows until we have a shoulder portion that can now stretch over to the base of our neck. And I will meet you back right after a back loop slip stitch row. My shoulder portion is now finished. I have a total of 14 rows and my width is now 3.5 inches or 9 centimeters unstretched. And now we're going to start working on the first half of our neckline. So we're all going to start by putting our piece up to ourselves and inserting our stitch marker into any stitch from the top, right where the base of our neck is. Now I've inserted my stitch marker into the 8th stitch from the top, and that is just about 2 inches or 5 centimeters. From here, since we should all be along the bottom, put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch until we have 2 right before our stitch marker left. We've made our way up with our back loop half double crochet row. Should have 2 stitches left right before our stitch marker, and now we're going to do a decrease of 2. So starting with the yarn over, insert your hook into that second to last back loop, pull through, also into that last back loop, pull through, then yarn over, pull through all 4. That is our decrease of 2 half double crochets. And from here, our slip stitch row, so chain 1, flip our work, and put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. At the end of the row, chain 2, flip our work, and put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last 2 just so we can decrease together once more. We finished our back loop slip stitch row, and our back loop half double crochet row is nearly finished. We're just going to do another decrease together. So yarn over, into that second to last back loop, pull through, also into that last back loop, pull through all 4, and then a slip stitch row. From here, continue to repeat our 2 previous rows. So a back loop slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases, and then a back loop half double crochet row that ends on a decrease of 2 until we have a neckline portion that can stretch over to mid collarbone. When we have that, I will meet back right after a back loop slip stitch row. The first half of my neck scoop is finished. I now have a total of 18 rows, and my width is now 4.5 inches or 11 centimeters unstretched. And now we're going to start working on the scoop portion. So we're all going to need to insert our stitch marker into the stitch right where we want the depth of our scoop to be. So if you'd like to cover more chest, insert your stitch marker higher, or if you'd like to show a little bit more, insert your stitch marker lower. I want mine right at mid chest, so I inserted my stitch marker into the 20th stitch from this corner, and that's just about 4.5 inches or 11 centimeters. Now from here, we're going to do a half double crochet row that ends on a decrease of 2, and then just a back loop half double and back loop slip stitch row working across our chest. So put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch and leave the last 2. We've put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last 2 right before our stitch marker. So let's do a decrease together. Yarn over into that second to last, pull through, and then also into that last, pull through, pull through all 4, and then a back loop slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases, and then a back loop half double crochet row with also no increases and no decreases. Continue to repeat these 2 rows, working our way across our chest and still making sure that we are stretching this as if we were wearing it until this can reach over to mid collarbone. And I'll meet you back right after a back loop slip stitch row, but keep in mind that we do have to do 1 more back loop half double crochet row with an increase of 2 at the end to match the decrease of 2 that we just did. So make sure you're not going over too much on your collarbone. I'll meet you back right after back loop slip stitch row. Alright, I have just worked my way across with my scoop portion. I have a total of 26 rows and my width is just about 5.5 inches or 13 centimeters. Now from here, we're going to do our last half double crochet row for this section. So put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last one so that we can do an increase of 2 to match this first row that ended on a decrease of 2. We already know how to do an increase, but just as a refresher, insert your hook into that last back loop with 2 half double crochets. And now from here, we're going to make a chain for the same amount of stitches that we skipped when we started off this entire section. So I skipped a total of 20 stitches, so now I'm going to make a chain of 20. And now that we have our chain, we're going to do the following row in a row sequence, which is a slip stitch row. So we're going to block off that last chain, do a chain 1, and then into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, insert with a slip stitch, and put 1 slip stitch into every chain, 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and then at the end of the row, chain 2 flip our work, put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last one so that we can increase into that last stitch together. Our back loop slip stitch row is finished. Now our back loop half double crochet row is nearly finished. Into that last stitch, we're just going to do an increase of 2 back loop half double crochets, and that's it. We're going to continue to repeat our back loop slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases, and our back loop slip stitch row that ends on an increase of 2 back loop half double crochets for the same amount of rows that we have for our neckline. As y'all can see, I only have 4 rows here, so I'll be doing 4 rows right over here, and then I'll meet you back so that we can get started on our shoulder. My neckline portion is finished up. I now have a total of 31 rows, and now we're going to do our shoulder. So since we all should have ended along the top after a half double crochet row, we're all going to make a chain for the same amount of stitches that we skipped along this side. I skipped a total of 8, so over here I'm going to make a chain of 8, and then we're going to do our back loop slip stitch and back loop half double crochet rows with no increases and no decreases for the same amount of rows as our first shoulder portion. When we have that finished, I will meet you back so we can get started on the underarm. So my shoulder is now finished, and we're now going to get started on our underarm. I have a total of 38 rows, and my width is now 9 inches or 23 centimeters unstretched. To get started on the first half of our underarm, we're going to need to insert our stitch marker into the same amount of chains that we made that led all the way up to our shoulder. I made a chain of 20, so on this side I inserted my stitch marker into the 20th stitch. From here, put one back loop half double crochet into every stitch until we have 3 stitches left. We've put one back loop half double crochet into every stitch, and we have left 1, 2, 3 stitches before our stitch marker. To do a decrease of 3 to match the increase of 3 we did on the other side for our underarm, we're going to yarn over, insert into that third to last back loop, pull through, into that second to last back loop, pull through, and also into that last back loop, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 5 loops. We're going to need to decrease into our slip stitch row as well, so chain 1 and flip your work. To do our decrease of 2 back loop slip stitches, insert your hook into that last stitch from our previous row's back loop, pull through, also into that following stitch's back loop, and when we have those 3 loops, yarn over, pull through all 3. Put one back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and from here we're going to continue to repeat these 2 rows. So a back loop half double crochet row that ends on a decrease of 3, and then a back loop slip stitch row that starts with a decrease of 2. Continue on with these 2 rows until we have the same amount of rows as the second half of our underarm portion when we started off this piece. It should be an odd number of rows, so I will meet you back right after a back loop half double crochet row. I am finished up with the first half of my underarm portion. My width is now 9.5 inches or 24 centimeters unstretched. And we're going to finish off this front panel with the second half of our underarm. So that's going to be a back loop slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases, and a back loop half double crochet row that ends on a decrease of 2. So since we all should have ended on our back loop half double crochet row, do our slip stitch row, and then do our half double crochet row, leaving 2 so we can decrease together. We've just finished up our back loop slip stitch row and our back loop half double crochet row, leaving the last 2. And we're going to decrease together, so yarn over, into that second to last, pull through, into that last, pull through all 4, and continue to repeat our 2 rows, so a back loop slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases, and a back loop half double crochet row that ends on a decrease of 2 for the same amount of rows as the first half of our underarm portion when we started this piece off. When we have those rows, do a chain up of 1 and cut. The entirety of my front panel is now finished. I have a total of 45 rows and my width is 10.5 inches or 27 centimeters unstretched, and I did do a chain up of 1 and cut. And now we can get started on the back panel, and I actually have the entirety of my back panel all finished up, so I'm just going to talk you guys through it. So getting started on the back panel, we're all going to start by making the same amount of chains that we made when we started off this piece. We're going to do the same underarm rows that we did for the same exact amount of rows, and then we're still going to make the same chain that led all the way up to our shoulder. Now, when it comes to doing the back panel portion, if this front panel that we have fits directly from mid-underarm across our chest to mid-underarm, you guys can do the same amount of rows from your first shoulder row all the way to your last shoulder row, but without all the increasing and decreasing. So this part for the back panel will be pretty simple. But because we had to do all the increasing and decreasing, for some of us, when you stretch it across your chest, it may wrap just a little bit past mid-underarm like how mine does, because mine is a size small. So what I did to make sure that we still get that fitted look that we want for this piece, I did just a few less rows for my back panel. So I just subtracted 4 rows to get it to be a bit slimmer, but everything else is going to be exactly the same. If you would like yours to have a looser fit, please feel free to add more rows, or if you'd like to have a super tiny fit, take away more rows. This is completely up to you, but I would say in general, just doing the same amount of rows from our first to last shoulder row should be pretty good. And then once we have the back, we'll finish up with the same underarm portion as the front panel for the same amount of rows. When we have that, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then we can get started on seaming everything together. So once we have both front and back panel finished up, we're going to seam the sides with an outside loop slip stitch seam. So let's all make sure that our work is looped right side out, meaning the ribbing that we have for the front panel is faced up, and the ribbing that we have for the back panel is face down. Next, we're going to insert our hook into the bottom corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Insert your yarn onto your hook, pull through, and then do a chain up of 1 to secure. We're going to find that first stitch into the front panel and insert only into that front loop. Find the next stitch into the back panel, insert into that back loop, and then yarn over, pull through all 3. Again, into the next stitch into the front panel, insert into that front loop, next stitch into the back panel, insert into the back loop, and pull through all 3. And continue doing this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. Do a chain up of 1 and cut when we don't, and then repeat on the other side. Now that our sides are seamed, we're now going to seam our shoulders. So let's make sure that our work is flipped wrong side out now, because this is going to be a single crochet seam and we want to see this on the inside. We're next going to insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Insert your yarn onto your hook, pull through, and then do a chain up of 1 to secure. Now we're going to be putting 1 single crochet into every side slip stitch row, and then 2 single crochets into every side half double crochet row. So let's get started with our first side slip stitch row. I'm going to find that top loop and insert it into the front panel. Find the side slip stitch row within the back panel, insert my hook into that top loop, and if you have a tail end, place that over your hook, and then single crochet. Now everyone's following side row should be a side half double crochet row. So find that top loop, insert within the front panel, find the side half double crochet row within the back panel, insert into that top loop, and single crochet. And since this is our side half double, we're going to be putting 1 more into the same top loops. So insert your hook into that top loop within the front panel, same top loop within the back panel, should be a little bit easier since everything should be gathered by now, and then single crochet. And we're going to continue to do this until we don't have any more side rows left to work into within the front panel. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then repeat on the other side. Now that everything is seamed together, we're now going to need to find the middle row within the back panel, and then we get started with our collar. So making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up, and we're looking at the back panel, we're going to find that middle row. It should be a side half double crochet row for everyone. And if you guys have my numbers, I just counted from my first side row here and just kept counting in 1 row at a time, and then insert my stitch marker into that 1 middle row. So for me, it was that 14th row. And now we can get started on the front panel. So let's flip our work right side up now. And now we're going to single crochet across the top of our neckline. And our neckline is just going to be from this corner point along the back to this corner point. We're going to single crochet across the next scoop later. So now that our hook is into that top corner stitch, insert your yarn onto your hook, pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure, and just like how we did our shoulder seam, we're going to be putting 2 single crochets into every side half double, 1 single crochet into every side slip stitch row, and we will have some regular stitches to work into as well, so just 1 single crochet into each of those. So just to do the first few, we're going to find that first side row, which should be a side slip stitch row, find that top loop, and insert our hook in through there with 1 single crochet. Now our following side row should be the side half double crochet row. So I'm going to insert my hook in through that top loop with 2 single crochets. So there's 1, and then into that same top loop with my second single crochet. And I'm going to continue this, making my way all the way around until this top corner stitch, and then do a chain up of 1 and cut. But we do still need to insert our stitch marker into our middle stitches once we get to that middle row within the back. So since our middle row is a side half double crochet row, 2 single crochets will be worked into the top of that row. Insert your stitch marker in through both of those top loops, or take 2 stitch markers, whatever you guys are more comfortable with, then insert it into there. So everyone will have 2 middle stitches. We want to make sure that we're doing that so that our collar is a lot easier once we start working into it, but get this finished up and then I'll meet you back. So my single crochet prep row for the collar is finished. I did make sure to insert my stitch marker into our 2 middle stitches, and now we're going to work on the increase portion of our collar. So let's all start by making sure that our work is flipped right side up, right side out, and then we're going to insert our hook into the top corner stitch of the neckline. Now this is going to start the same for everyone, no matter what size we're making. Go ahead and insert your yarn onto your hook and start with a chain 2. Now that we have our chain 2, we're going to slip stitch into that second chain from our hook. So we're going to skip that first stitch, into the second, yarn over, and gently pull through everything. And now we're going to slip stitch it into the base. So this is my first stitch into the base. Let's go ahead and insert our hook in through there. Pull through everything. And that counts as our first row. And that slip stitch that we did into the base doesn't count as a stitch, that's just to connect it. And to get started into our following row, slip stitch into that next stitch into the base, and flip your work. Now we're going to slip stitch into that one stitch that we have from our previous row, not into the stitches that we just worked into the base. So insert your hook into that back loop, yarn over, pull through everything on our hook. And we do need to increase as well. So to get started on the following row, we're going to chain 2. That first chain is going to count as a stitch. That second chain counts as our turning chain and flip our work. And now we're going to put one back loop slip stitch into every stitch, starting with the second chain from our hook. So we're going to skip one, and this might be a little twisted, so go ahead and twist your work over if you need to, but into that second chain from our hook, insert into that back loop, yarn over, pull through everything, and we should all have one stitch after that. Insert your hook into that stitch's back loop, and pull through everything. And now to connect it into the base again, find that next stitch into the base, insert with a slip stitch. And then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next stitch into the base, flip our work, and then repeat. So one back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and when we're along the end, we're going to chain 2. That first chain is going to count as a stitch, that second chain is going to count as a chain. So let's get this row started. Insert your hook into that following stitch's back loop, pull through everything, into that next stitch's back loop, pull through everything, and now that we're at the end of the row, chain 2, and flip your work. And now we're going to slip stitch into that second chain from our hook, and then continue putting one back loop slip stitch into every stitch. And just to connect it into the base once more, find that next stitch into the base, slip stitch into there, into that next stitch into the base, slip stitch into there to work our way up to the following row, flip our work, and put one back loop slip stitch into every stitch. And that is it. We're going to continue to repeat these 2 rows until we get the height of the collar that we actually want, but making sure that we're not going too far back, because we are just going to work straight across until we reach our stitch markers along the back after that. So get that finished, and I'll meet you back along the bottom. I am back with the increase half of my collar. I have a total of 16 rows, and now from here, we're just going to do our back loop slip stitch rows with no increases and no decreases, making sure that we're connecting it into the base the same way that we have been doing this entire time until we reach our first middle stitch marker stitch. When we've worked into that stitch, do a chain up of 1 and cut. Then we're going to repeat everything starting from this corner for the same amount of increase rows and then working our way all the way back. Once we're worked into that middle stitch marker stitch, do not do a chain up of 1 and cut, because then we can seam it all up together from there. Alright, so now that both sides of my collar is finished up, we're now going to seam it together by doing an outside loop slip stitch seam. So let's all make sure that our work is flipped right side out and right side up. We're going to insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. We're going to pull through and then do a chain up of 1 to secure. And since we already know how to do this, let's just do the first seam together. Find that first stitch into the front panel, insert into that front loop. Find the first stitch into the back panel, insert into the back loop, pull through all 3. And continue this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into, and then do a chain up of 1 and cut. Our collar is now all finished. Now we're going to single crochet along our scoop. So this is going to be pretty simple. We're going to make sure that our work is flipped right side out and right side up. Then we're going to insert our hook into the top corner stitch of the front panel. Insert your yarn onto your hook, pull through, and do a chain up of 1 to secure. And we're just going to put 1 single crochet into every stitch, 2 single crochet into every side half double, and 1 single crochet into every side slip stitch row, and then continue to single crochet all the way up until we reach this top corner over here. So just do the first one, find that first stitch, and insert in through that stitch. And if you all are like me, you should have some tail ends. So just place that over your hook and single crochet around everything, and I'll meet you back when we have this portion all finished up right after chain up a 1 and cut. So now that we have finished cleaning our neckline, now we're going to clean our armholes. We're all going to start by making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up, and then we're going to insert our hook into the last stitch that we have into our side seam, and we're just going to single crochet all the way around. So 2 single crochet into every side half double, 1 single crochet into every side slip stitch, 1 single crochet into every stitch, and then slip stitch into that chain space, do a chain of a 1 and cut, and then repeat on the other side. We have just finished up single crocheting along our armholes, and we're all done. Last thing we're going to have to do is weave in all of our ends. And there you have it. Hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch you on the next one. Bye!